Mark Vance thought she was an intern delivering documents, a quiet girl with no credentials. What he didn't expect was for her to build a case so airtight, it would dismantle his billion-dollar project in front of the entire city planning commission. Before we continue, if you are watching our video for the first time, please bless and support us by hitting that subscribe button and comment down below where you are watching from. The commission hall wasn't silent. You could hear the low hum of the air conditioning, the rustle of expensive suits, and the occasional cough from a city official. But the air felt heavy when Maya walked in. She wasn't dressed to impress. Just a simple black turtleneck, dark jeans, and worn boots. The kind of outfit you'd wear to a late-night study session at the university library. But she wore it like a shield. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, a pair of glasses sitting on her nose. She looked focused, controlled, like someone who had already calculated every possible outcome while everyone else was just reading the agenda. At a small table near the back, she sat down slowly. No team of lawyers beside her, just a thick 3-ring binder and a cardboard box containing a meticulously crafted scale model. And that's when Mark Vance laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a quiet chuckle to his associate. A little smirk that said he found the whole thing adorable, like a child showing off a school project. Judge Thompson, the commission chair, looked up from his notes. "Miss Rivas, you're presenting the community appeal today?" "Yes, sir," she said, her voice even steady, no sign of nerves. Vance leaned back in his front row seat, crossing one leg over the other. "This won't take long," he whispered to his colleague. Maya didn't even look his way. To the rest of the room, it looked like a foregone conclusion. A student from the local college trying to be noble, a last-ditch effort to stop inevitable progress. But what they didn't know, not yet, was that Maya Rivas had spent the last 6 months preparing like her entire world depended on it. Because for some people, it did. She glanced at the front row where Mr. Chun sat with his wife. He owned the small bakery that had been in his family for 3 generations and was now slated for demolition. Mr. Chun wasn't smiling. He looked like a man holding his breath, waiting for the fall. Maya gave him a small nod, not for reassurance, for confirmation. She was ready. The clerk called the agenda item, the appeal against the Oakwood Tower development project, one final hearing. Maya stood, ready. "Mr. Vance, I've reviewed your firm's proposal," the chair said. "It's very impressive. I must advise you, Miss Rivas, this commission operates on zoning laws and economic reports, not sentiment. You will be held to a standard of factual evidence." "I understand, sir." Vance shook his head slightly, as if this was all a waste of his valuable time. A young girl trying to argue urban planning with a man whose face was on the cover of architecture magazines. To him, it was a joke. But here's what he didn't know. Maya hadn't just been attending community meetings after the project was announced. She hadn't been posting angry rants online. She'd been working. She'd been digging through dusty city archives, pulling century-old property records, and cross-referencing forgotten environmental statutes. And most importantly, she'd been building a case piece by piece, because when Vance had stood in the community hall 2 months prior and called their neighborhood underutilized real estate, he wasn't just being dismissive, he was being careless. The evidence of his carelessness was now sitting in her binder, and that evidence was about to make a room full of powerful people sit up and listen. It happened on a Wednesday evening, damp and cold, the kind of night that makes you want to stay inside. A community meeting was held in the high school gymnasium. Mark Vance stood at the podium, a slick PowerPoint presentation behind him showing gleaming towers of glass and steel. He called it the future a revitalization, a necessary step forward. But Maya saw something else. She saw the map where Mr. Chen's bakery was just a red square marked for demolition. She saw the block where a dozen other small, family-owned shops stood, erased and replaced with luxury condos and high-end retail. That's when she heard it. The quiet sob of Mrs. Garcia, who ran the laundromat for 40 years. Vance didn't seem to notice. He just kept talking about profit margins and tax incentives. Then Mr. Chun stood up. He wasn't yelling, just asking, his voice trembling slightly. "Sir, my family has been there since 1948. It's more than a building. It's our life." Vance gave him a placating smile, the kind a parent gives a child who doesn't understand. "I appreciate your passion," he said, "but progress requires sacrifice. The city needs this development. It's for the greater good." A few people in the crowd muttered, but most were silent, defeated. Maya just watched, her jaw set. She pulled out a small notebook and started writing, not about emotion, but about the words Vance was using, the claims he was making, the promises he couldn't possibly keep. When he said the project had passed all environmental and historical reviews, she wrote that down. When he said the existing structures were unsalvageable, she underlined it twice. Because he wasn't just telling a story, he was telling lies, and she knew that lies, when written into official documents, have a way of becoming liabilities. The days that followed were a blur. Maya wasn't a lawyer or an architect. She was a third-year urban planning student with a scholarship and a two-job workload. She couldn't afford a legal team, so she became one. She remembered what her professor, Dr. Evelyn Reed, always said: "The system has rules. Use their own rules against them." That night, she downloaded every zoning ordinance related to the downtown district. The next night, she was reading historical preservation acts from the 1970s. She started building a timeline, highlighting every loophole, every contradiction, every instance of lazy due diligence. She reached out to Dr. Reed, who had retired last spring. When she heard what Maya was doing, she sent over a box of old textbooks and a link to a private database of geological surveys. It was like adding fuel to a fire. Maya didn't just study the law, she inhaled it. She found old city council meeting minutes that mentioned a forgotten wetlands designation near the proposed construction site. She learned how to read structural blueprints from online tutorials. She even used her savings to pay a biology student to conduct an independent wildlife survey of the area. Her schoolwork started to feel secondary. Her friends wondered where she was, but she was on a mission. She rehearsed her arguments in her small apartment, using her cat as a silent judge, recording herself to check her tone and pacing. She didn't want to sound angry. She wanted to sound inevitable. Not because she hated Mark Vance, but because he represented a brand of arrogance that believed it could pave over anything without checking the foundations first. But the thing about foundations is, people rarely look at them until the whole building starts to shake, and then they wonder how they never noticed the cracks in the first place. Maya didn't work like someone hoping for a miracle. She worked like someone building one from scratch. Every morning began at 5 a.m. at her small kitchen table, covered in maps, printouts, and sticky notes. Her binder was now a beast, 4 inches thick, color-coded and cross-referenced. Yellow for zoning violations, blue for environmental oversights, red for Vance's direct contradictions. She had watched the recording of his community presentation a dozen times, breaking down every claim he made. Her father, a construction worker, had wanted her to let it go. "Mija," he told her one evening, "you can't fight a man like that. He has millions. You have student loans." Maya didn't argue. She just pointed to a blueprint on her screen. "He says that old brick warehouse is a teardown, but he doesn't know it was one of the first buildings in this city to use reinforced steel supports. It's a fortress, Dad. I'm not trying to fight him. I'm trying to prove he didn't do his homework." That quiet determination convinced him more than any shouting match could. Later that week, she sat with Dr. Reed in a small coffee shop. The retired professor looked over Maya's notes, her eyes sharp. "They're going to dismiss you as emotional," Dr. Reed said. "Don't let them. Don't talk about history or community. Talk about liability and non-compliance." That line became her mantra. She wrote it on the inside cover of her binder. Talk about liability, not history. In her spare time, she built a scale model of the neighborhood. Not the shiny one from Vance's firm, but a real one, showing the cracks in the sidewalks, the old trees he planned to cut down, and the small alleyway that, according to a 1920s city map, was still public property. Even the owner of the local print shop gave her a discount when he saw what she was compiling. People started to believe in her, not because she asked for support, but because she never stopped working. They saw her dedication. But Vance didn't. He still believed this was a formality, a young idealist making a final, useless plea. He had no idea that the student sitting in the back of the room had prepared more thoroughly than his entire legal team. because confidence has a way of shattering when it's forced to confront a truth it never bothered to look for. And Maya was about to turn on the lights. The commission hall was tense when it was her turn. Maya walked to the podium. She placed her binder down but didn't open it. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and even. "My name is Maya Rivas, and I am here not to appeal to your sentiment, but to your legal obligations as stewards of this city." She let that hang in the air for a moment. Then she turned to Vance. "Mr. Vance, your firm's geological survey stated that the bedrock in the proposed zone is stable and suitable for high-rise construction. Is that correct?" Vance looked bored. "Yes, it's perfectly stable." "Well, I'd like to submit into the record this report from the State Geological Database from 1988. She slid a document across the podium. "It indicates a dormant fault line running directly beneath Lot 7, the site of your main tower. A fault line that requires a far deeper and more expensive foundation than the one detailed in your public proposal." Vance's smile tightened. "We ran our own tests. Her information is outdated." "Is it?" Maya replied calmly. "Because I also have the city's Ordinance 1138B, which states that any construction within 500 feet of a known fault line, dormant or not, requires an independent public review, not a private one." "Did your firm submit for that review?" The room was quiet. Vance shifted in his seat. "That ordinance is rarely enforced. It was my understanding." "It's not your understanding that matters, sir. It's the law." Maya pivoted without missing a beat. "Your historical assessment also claims that none of the buildings in the demolition zone have any protected status." "Correct. Yes. They are all commercially zoned with no historical value." She turned a page in her binder. "Then why did the City Council in 1978 pass a motion to protect the facade of the old courthouse bakery, now Mr. Chen's building, as a founding commercial landmark? A motion that was never repealed?" She held up a grainy photocopy of the meeting minutes. "I found this in the undigitized archives in the basement of City Hall. It seems your researchers never went downstairs." The commission chair leaned forward, looking at the document for the first time. His expression was no longer dismissive. It was intrigued. Vance's lawyer stood up to object, but Maya was already moving on to her final point, and this was the one that would break the entire case. "Your structural report on the old cannery building describes it as a dangerously dilapidated structure beyond repair, correct?" Vance nodded. "Yes, it's a public hazard." Maya walked over to her cardboard box and lifted out her scale model. She placed it on the table. "It's only a hazard if you don't know what you're looking at," she said, pointing to the cannery building. "You see, your team reported that the walls were crumbling, but they failed to note that this building was the site of a federal munitions project during World War II. According to declassified federal records, it was retrofitted with a reinforced steel cage designed to withstand a direct blast. Your team saw crumbling brick. I saw a bomb-proof frame." A quiet gasp went through the room. Vance stared at the model, then at Maya. His face had lost all its color. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing on a trapdoor, and Maya was holding the lever. The silence after she spoke was deafening. The commission chair stared at the documents Maya had provided, his fingers drumming on the table. He looked from Maya's calm, determined face to Mark Vance's now pale and flustered one. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance, do you have a response to these claims?" Vance stood up, his voice strained. "Your Honor, this is absurd. This is a collection of outdated papers and amateur theories, pulled out of context by a student trying to make a name for herself." Maya didn't flinch. She simply replied, "Every document I have submitted is a public record. Every statute I have cited is current city law. Are you claiming that the public record is amateur theory?" The chair cut in. "That's enough. I've seen enough. The commission will take a 30-minute recess to review these materials." When they returned, the energy in the room had irrevocably shifted. Judge Thompson sat down and looked directly at Maya. "Miss Rivas, the evidence you have presented is not only compelling, it is alarming. It brings into question the fundamental due diligence of the applicant's proposal. Therefore, This commission is issuing an immediate and indefinite stay on the Oakwood Tower project. All permits are suspended pending a full investigation into the discrepancies you have brought to our attention. A wave of relief washed over the faces of the community members in the audience. Mr. Chun had tears streaming down his face. Vance didn't move. He just sat there, staring forward, as if the words hadn't registered. Maya simply closed her binder. A single, quiet click that echoed like a gavel. Her victory wasn't loud. It was quiet, it was factual, and it was absolute because power isn't always about who can shout the loudest. Sometimes it's about who did the reading. When Maya walked out of the city hall, the afternoon sun felt different, warmer. Her father was there, and he hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." Mr. Chun and his wife rushed over, thanking her over and over. The story spread quickly, not just through the city, but online. A local blogger had live-tweeted the hearing. The headline went viral: "Student architect defeats billionaire developer with library books." By evening, news vans were parked outside Maya's apartment, but she wasn't interested in fame. She was having tea with Dr. Reed. "You didn't just win an appeal today," Dr. Reed said. "You reminded them that the rules apply to everyone, even the men in expensive suits." A week later, Mark Vance's firm issued a public apology, and he was removed from the project. His career was permanently stained by the one thing he thought he could ignore: the details. The city offered Maya a paid internship in the planning department, which she accepted. On her first day, she didn't wear a suit. She wore the same turtleneck and jeans. Her office was small, but her desk was covered in maps and old blueprints, right where she belonged. The message wasn't just about a student who saved a neighborhood. It was about what happens when passion is paired with preparation. It was a reminder that the truth is the most powerful tool there is, and it's available to anyone willing to do the work. Maya Rivas didn't ask for a fight, but when one came, she didn't just show up. She came with receipts. She proved that knowledge is the great equalizer, and sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one person you should have been watching all along. If the story inspired you, share it, because someone out there needs to know their voice can be a wrecking ball. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. We have more stories to tell, stories that prove that the world isn't just changed by the people at the top. It's changed by the ones who know the foundation better than anyone else.